It's the 4th of April 1975 and we're in Sydney, Australia. The end of the working week in King's Cross inner city. There was nothing suspicious looking about the two women browsing the jewellers that morning. Aroused the attention of the middle-aged shop attendant alone in the shop that Friday morning. Then, without warning, the smaller female of the pair drew a cut-down rifle from underneath her jacket, pointed it directly in the face of Edna Parker, screaming, "Give us the fucking tray!" Pointing to the tray of rings. The petrified and compliant Parker reached for the tray, and as she turned her back, pleading, "I'll do as you say," a shot rang out. Edna Parker now lay on the floor, fighting for her life, a bullet between her shoulder blades. Then, in an act of cowardice and callousness, the larger and older-looking companion grabbed the weapon, using the butt of the rifle, proceeded to bash the incapacitated Parker to death. The pair took a grand total of $8,000 Australian. Within a week, Carol Payton, 16, and Judith Garrett, 17, were in Australian police custody, facing a murder charge. There was public outrage and calls to hang the bitches. Payton, she would soon have company in remand, having given birth to a son. She was 8 months pregnant when she shot Parker. Two weeks after the Sydney murder, Australian police releasing the names of the two New Zealand citizens now in custody, the phone in Terry Priest's dingy office had been ringing non-stop. He knows full well who will be calling. It will be either the press, not just the local paper, the Christchurch press, media up and down New Zealand, or his boss. They had all been mercilessly hounding him. The story of the two Kiwis behind the brutal murder was front-page news on both sides of the Tasman. And when it had come to light, the pair had answered an earlier advert placed in the Christchurch papers for exotic person required, good personalities and appearance required, vetted by Priest. Those two successful applicants, now notorious killers, both having been strippers at varying times at the Pink Pussycat Club, even whilst at Hagley High School. Press attention was now focused on the establishment. As the manager, Priest was doing his best to ignore it. What he couldn't ignore any longer, feared more, were the calls from his boss, the backer of the business he fronted, Rainton Hastie, knowing he was going to get a right royal bullocking. Grossly underage staff went good for the business and the brand. Sheepishly, Priest dialed the Aucklander. Rainton Hastie was the godfather of Striptease clubs in New Zealand, opened the first strip club in New Zealand. The Pink Pussycat Club began on Karangahape Road, Auckland, 1963. Others followed, Velvet Touch and Pleasure Palace. In 1973, Hastie looked south to New Zealand's second largest city to expand his empire. Christchurch would be graced by the Pink Pussycat Strip Club, based out of the second floor of the historic Laurie and Wilson auction building at 210 Churm Street. Before I get into the meat of the story, a bit about that building. One of the few survivors from the 2011 earthquakes, it's still there, remains defiant. The building has had a large variety of tenants since it first went up in 1910. A gymnasium, a fashion shop, entertainment centre, nightclub, German restaurant, and then the base for the Christchurch City Council's meter readers. My punk band played there when it was called Strummers Nightclub in 1980, a year or so past when the Pink Pussycat Club had closed. The brief 5-year existence of the club on Churm Street was dogged with controversy even before it really got going. Rainton wasn't seen as a desirable person to be running such an establishment. To get around the reluctance of the Christchurch City Council to grant him a licence to operate a strip club and bar, Rainton first tried to sidestep the issue, framing it as a private members club. You rolled up and paid your entrance fee, walked up the stairs. Hey presto, you remember. Frustrated at the bureaucracy, in the end, Hastie circumvented all the local council's antipathy by using Terry Priest as the applicant on the licence, which was granted. To add further context to the podcast, New Zealand in the 70s was drab and bland, ruled by officious overlords who missed out on their heyday of bureaucracy by 3 decades and an ability to speak fluent German. The New Zealand Police Force comprised 2 separate de facto subsections: the knee-bending Christians, the elbow-bending rugby and bear types. You needed a licence to fart in public. Bet your boots an establishment like the Pink Pussycat would be on the radar of officious fun spoilers, from those that issued licences to health inspectors. And then, of course, we had the morality police. They all had their claws out for Rainton Hastie's businesses. First, though, back to the jewellery store murder, more would come out in the wash-up. The sentence to life in prison for a crime that was called callous by the judge. It came out that both had been prostituting themselves on both sides of the Tasman, been stripping at a Dunedin club. Carol Penton would ultimately lose her son, and Garrett would briefly escape prison 5 years later. A year later, the manager of the Pink Pussycat Club in Christchurch would be juggling more balls. The subject of this video title you pressed. It's about to be outlaid. The New Zealand police began doing undercover visits to these striptease establishments. It was a hard job, but someone had to do it. No New Zealand policeman in their right mind would want to get paid to lounge about having a beer whilst watching females undress. I imagine many would rather call in sick than give into this onerous task. The Pink Pussycats in Christchurch and Auckland would soon both be facing charges when the morality police simultaneously attended performance in both centres. March 1976. The first to go to court was Christchurch. Charges of performing an indecent act for purposes of game were brought against 2 men aged 23 and 28, 2 women 17 and 19, one of the men being Terry Priest, the others the performers. The jury got to hear how Constable D.W. Teal got the short straw and found himself sitting inside the Pink Pussycat Club on Churn Street. His testimony was somewhat amusing, well, at least in hindsight, and for those like you and me that have a sixth sense of humour. The show began rather conventionally with 2 female strippers and then replaced with a male and a female stripper. Then a coffin was placed on the mirrored floor on the stage. One semi-naked female got into the coffin and another knelt down beside it, feigning sadness. Then from behind the kneeling mourning female, a man donning a black cape came and pretended to strangle her. And then as she lay prone on the stage, acting dead, the male stripper mounted her and proceeded to simulate sex. When he had done the job on one, and tipped the other from her resting place inside the coffin, began faking banging her too, which then involved, as a climax, not the best choice of words, by placing his penis between the coffin girl's breasts. As the song, We Like 'Em Dead But Warm, was playing. As far as my searches can tell, no such song exists. Anyway, in state of Christchurch, a salacious story is said to involve simulated acts of necrophilia, media gold in drab and bland land, played out in newspapers up and down the country. It wasn't just the jury that got to hear all the gory details. Ironically, some of the most telling testimonies that were heard were those of the plainclothes police constable and also the detective leading the investigation. When the defence lawyers asked if this was the first time they had been into the establishment, "Could you please tell the court if you have been to the Pink Pussycat in civilian capacity?" they both sheepishly answered, "Yes." And then the defence proceeded to deal another hammer blow. "Are you aware of other police officers who have attended this establishment when this particular act was being performed?" Again soliciting a Yes. Was it not right 4 ununiformed officers attended this establishment a week prior? Then to rip apart the moral fabric, why did these off-duty officers not report these stage acts previously? The entire police force in Christchurch hoped like hell their wives weren't taking interest in the case. The defence went on to paint the act as little more than an adult scene from a Hammer horror featuring Dracula. Priest said, "It was way too hippie for my liking. Still, the punters liked it. These days you can see more in a tobacco shop Playboy." The defence went on to indicate the act had not harmed anyone. No graves had been dug up post-performance. The female strippers took the stand and explained they always inserted tampons as safety procedures. The male testified he never got erect. In the eyes of the jury, these revelations meant the police's case lacked credibility. There was nothing to see here other than bad taste. The act had not harmed anyone. The wash-up of this highly entertaining 6-week trial was the 3 strippers got off. Priest wasn't so lucky. The judge fined him $750 for not warning the audience or telling his staff they could get into trouble if someone complains, which, I must add, no one did. The Coffin and Dead Maidens Act were not just performed in Christchurch, Auckland as well, and that's where we go now. More sticky beat New Zealand police with no burglaries or assaults to investigate in the month of March 76. Best allocation of resources and sending staff to spend time inside a Karanga Happy Road strip club rather than patrolling the crime-ridden streets surrounding it. The one on the dock wasn't the owner Rainton Hastie, rather a 26-year-old stripper called Ingrid Summers, which is a pretty good name for a stripper there. The details on this operation are a wee bit more sketchier than the one with the coffin. Not satisfied one constable was up to the task, getting paid to pervert naked women. The police in Auckland sent 2 one night. Summers' act must have been enthralling enough for 3 the next. She pled guilty to performing an indecent act. In short, playing with herself on stage, in close, and I mean close, proximity to the punters. No mention was made of the background music, and since the New Zealand Police Force had a tendency to not remember songs correctly, and this video is already demonetised, let me suggest it was this one. Let's get into the swing of things and get your creative juices flowing. That was creative juices. Go into Pulp Fiction mode, listeners.
To get you someday.
Too much information? Question mark. For those of you who want to support my work on YouTube, contribute, as I currently suffer from COVID, Kung Flu, towards a regime of 10 pseudoephedrine a day. There's a super thanks button at the bottom of the screen. For those wanting more classic stripper photos, wait to the very end. On with the story. Like I said, Ingrid had accepted what the police had to say, with some caveats. 1, she had been performing the same act at King's Cross, Australia for the last 5 years without issue. 2, she knew of other policemen who had attended identical performances, and they went rushing back to work in outrage. 3, In a rather interesting twist, defence ploy, the charges listed her as a female when she indicated, technically, she was born a man, had got the snip and tuck, rendering the prosecution null and void on a technicality. The police were then forced into the expense of engaging a gynecologist who confirmed their eyes weren't deceiving them. She was the real thing. The sentence was one involving a just periodic detention, a slap on the wrist, light enough not to leave telltale marks for the wife to see. Rather than getting the public support via the police stopping these indecencies amongst their midst, most of the public sided with the strippers and the club managers. No one was forcing people to attend or perform. Ingrid Summers was earning more than the police commissioner. The embarrassing revelations also came forth that the police were also loyal off-duty Pink Pussycat customers, all meaning that was the death knell to any such future undercover missions. Then there was the free publicity, the Streisand effect. It was good for business. The Pink Pussycat in Christchurch wouldn't disappear from the papers totally before it closed at the end of 1978. One last newsworthy event. There was a strike undertaken by the ladies to get a heating system upgraded. If you immediately thought, chortling to yourself at the same time, what does a stripper strike entail? Putting clothes on? You'd be right. And then in more titillation, with the clothes on kind, up in Auckland at the same time, the headline in the papers read, "Government to help stripper." That's a headline I'd like to see more, rather than the government helping gang members mole with a free house. Evidently the Pink Pussycat had been diddling the stripper in question. Diddling as in short-changing. The Labour Department went into bat on her behalf, made sure there would only be negotiated backstage diddling in future. As I close this one out, I know fully well you are dying to see those classic stripper photos I promised. This isn't actually the first story I've done featuring a coffin. The other one is about Hitler's coffin, a mere 10 minutes. It's a must watch and listen. Links below. Thanks for your time today. Cue the music. Now those vintage strippers photos.
Down, down, down.